Probably the most commonly asked question is, does the cradle replace shoulder rests? And the short answer is no. Chin rests and shoulder rests perform different functions, and they're good at doing different things. So the cradle doesn't really replace shoulder rests. It just might reduce your need for one to a certain degree. Now, the place to start really to look at this in more detail is looking at how, at the connections that we want to the instrument. So we feel very strongly that you want to have the instrument resting on the collarbone. The collarbone is like the lowest point on the body today that we can put the instrument. And that allows a lot of things. First of all, it keeps us sort of settled into the string. If we raise the instrument up to the chin with a shoulder rest, we end up here a little higher, which requires more effort, more energy. It also tends to put the bow arm into positions that are a little more difficult when you're trying to access sort of the basic bowing motion. The left hand, Yehudi Menuhin was one of the, I believe this is in one of his books, where he talks about how the left hand likes to come towards the left shoulder, not over it. If you try and go over the shoulder, it kind of cramps things up a little bit. Now, obviously, the level of the strings is always going to be kind of over the shoulder. But if we raise the instrument up from underneath with the shoulder rest, we move the strings even farther away from the shoulder, which kind of complicates that. So having the instrument on the collarbone allows the hand to go closer to, follow that line that goes more closely to the shoulder. It also produces a uniquely secure feeling. When you have a direct connection from jaw to collarbone through the chin rest and the instrument, that's a straight line. Typically the jaw is very close to right above the collarbone. So when you have that straight line right here, there's a really nice sensation of security that's created. When you use a shoulder rest to produce that feeling of security, typically what happens is shoulder rests live out here, right? So they move that connection from here to here. And this is a little bit problematic because the collarbone is inherently less mobile than the shoulder. It's connected to the shoulder, and you can move the collarbone when you move the shoulder, but the amount it moves right here where it pivots is really quite small. So the inclination, it seems, to squeeze up in order to keep the instrument secure, that squeezing up when the instrument is on the collarbone doesn't do a whole lot for you, so it seems to reduce the tendency to squeeze up a little bit. The collarbone is also a little bit like a shelf. And it provides a really nice, stable structure upon which to rest the instrument. But the shoulder is the most mobile joint in the body, including it can move in this way, right? So if we move the connection from here to here, I find myself, no matter how hard I try and resist it, without even my noticing it, squeezing up into the shoulder rest. And that produces that feeling of like a fixed sense of security in a way. And it feels good for a little while, but that constant squeezing up of the shoulder, I find, causes lots of pain between the shoulder blades and fatigue in the long run. So if we have, basically what we're looking for is we're looking to establish a primary sensation of connection with the instrument right here first. And then when we add a shoulder rest back into the mix, which is perfectly fine, I encourage folks to see if they can make that a secondary sensation. Basically, think of the shoulder rest adding primarily friction and a little bit of stability for the left hand. The other thing to take note of when using a shoulder rest is that because shoulder rests are so sticky and because we can squeeze up into them, oftentimes we can get away with less than ideal positions in the body. So shoulder rests, because they're so sticky, allow us to slouch forward with our shoulders and collapse the sternum. And they're so sticky that they make sure that the violin won't slip away from us. as soon as we take the shoulder rest off of the instrument, if we keep that position, if we forget to play with a proud sternum, then the instrument's going to want to slip away from us. And this is probably one of the most common frustrations of players when they're going from a shoulder rest to playing without one, is that you have to remind yourself that in order to play without a shoulder rest, you really have to keep a proud sternum, open the chest like a book, and keep the shoulders back and down. And you keep this sort of dynamic poise in the body, and that gives the violin a place to rest. And then your jaw is sort of just stabilizing a little bit, but the violin, the instrument, is really resting right here, and it frees up the shoulder to do whatever it would like to do. So even when you add a shoulder rest back into the mix, however, you want to make sure that you keep that proud sternum. So shoulder rest, though, can make it really easy to get a little bit lazy and to start collapsing in front.